Hey guys, what's up? I'm Erin and welcome back to the channel. So last week I did a video talking about the various rates of withdrawal that you could use and still be successful in retirement. That video was kind of born out of how the fact of the rule of 4% has been thrust into the spotlight as Dave Ramsey recently made headlines as he suggested that an 8% rate of withdrawal might be more appropriate. And in that video, I predominantly feature two different tables from the Financial Planning Association. They go over various rates of withdrawal and their success rates over different time horizons. I will link those tables down below if you're interested. And while you're there, if you could hit like, if you could hit subscribe, it really does help the channel. The key difference in these tables is that one provides a rate of withdrawal that is not adjusted for inflation, meaning that each year you withdraw the exact same amount from that portfolio. The other table provides an inflation-adjusted rate of withdrawal, and that table falls in line with the more traditional rule of 4%, where you start with a single rate of withdrawal and adjust up for the rate of inflation each and every year. This would keep your spending power constant. Now, when you look at these two tables, the one that does not allow for an adjustment for inflation suggests that a higher rate of withdrawal is perfectly safe, in the ballpark of about 7%. The one that does allow for an adjustment for inflation suggests that your rate of withdrawal should be lower, maybe in the neighborhood of 4 or 5% to ensure a portfolio's success. And I thought as a companion to that video, it would be nice to run an example on these different withdrawal rates and see, one, if you would have been able to withdraw this amount and what would happen to these portfolios over time. Because when you talk about the rule of 4%, I think a lot of people envision a portfolio that is behaving perfectly, as if it's an ideal world where you get to withdraw your 4% and your portfolio just keeps growing. Perhaps thinking along the lines of the market is going to return its 8% or so per year, so my portfolio is just going to go up every single year. So compound interest will do its magic and my portfolio would look something like this. And while compound interest is certainly magical, intellectually we all know that it doesn't behave like this ideal scenario. Yes, over time the market may average that 8, 9, or 10% a year, but that's not the actual amount it returns every single year. Rather, it looks like this, a lot of ups and downs along the way. So I wanted to run an example comparing a fixed non-inflation adjusted withdrawal rate and an inflation adjusted withdrawal rate over a typical time horizon for a typical retirement. We'll start with $1 million portfolio and look at a retirement that spans at least 20 years, because the average retirement in the US is slightly less than 20 years. And I'm going to kind of cherry pick my years here. I'm going to offer the very best case scenario, but I'm also going to offer the very worst case scenario, because about 20 years ago, we were smack dab in the middle of the dot-com bubble, which resulted in severe market downturns. So I'm going to run these numbers from the stance of retiring right as that dot-com bubble hit, and then also from the standpoint of waiting until that dot-com bubble had passed and the recovery had started. Because how the market performs in your first few years of retirement has a profound impact on the value of your portfolio and the likelihood of your portfolio's success over your retirement. So if you haven't watched that other video that I did, I discussed that in there. Make sure to watch it. But since you've already started this one, finish this one, then go watch it. I will link it down below. But this video really is the companion to that one. So let's get to the examples. So for this first one, let's do a traditional rule of 4%. That is, the retiree starts by withdrawing 4% of their portfolio and adjusting up for inflation each and every year. We're going to start with $1 million portfolio, so our retiree withdraws $40,000 in that first year, adjusting up each year for inflation. And we're deliberately starting with the worst market downturn in roughly the past 2 decades, the dot-com bubble. So our retiree is starting to make these withdrawals in the year 2000. As you can see in this example, during the first 3 years of withdrawals on his portfolio actually come when the market is on a pretty extreme downward trajectory. And in just 3 years' time, that portfolio is cut down to almost $500,000. So it's cut almost completely in half. Starting the withdrawals in an extreme down market was actually detrimental to this portfolio. While the portfolio tries to rebound, it's never able to get back to those initial amounts. And the portfolio actually fails by 2018, where our retiree is unable to withdraw the full amount that they actually need because the portfolio is less than the amount they would actually need. So this retiree has run out of money. So this retiree would have actually had to find a way to live on less, to withdraw a lesser amount, or they would have had to find a way to supplement their income. Maybe that's going back to work, maybe that's a reverse mortgage, maybe that's downsizing their home, whatever they need to do to keep their head above water. So even though the rule of 4% is considered the safe withdrawal rate, it still failed in this case. So what if we used a fixed withdrawal rate, one that is not adjusted for inflation? In the previous video, I discussed how perhaps a 7% rate of withdrawal is considered safe if not adjusted for inflation. So that's the one we're going to use here. Based on the data from the Financial Planning Association, they say that 7% of the initial value of the portfolio could be considered safe. Again, we're going to use $1 million portfolio, but a 7% rate of withdrawal. So our retiree is taking out $70,000 a year, and they start making these withdrawals in the year 2000, when the dot-com bubble first started. This time, the portfolio fails at a quicker rate, this time in the year 2011, when the retiree is unable to make their full $70,000 withdrawal. So assuming our retiree spends 11 years or more in retirement, he's going to have to find another income source because this situation results in him running out of money. So even though both of these withdrawal strategies had overwhelming odds of being successful, being that they started in an extreme down market, both of them failed. Yes, it did take longer for the rule of 4% to fail, but they still both failed. But what if our retiree had better timing? What if he retired into an upward market? Again, we start with $1 million portfolio, and if we're using that rule of 4%, we're withdrawing $40,000 every single year and adjusting up for inflation. This time, the retiree doesn't start making their withdrawals until 2003, when the market is actually recovering. At this point, this portfolio is a resounding success. Not only does this retiree not run out of money, but their portfolio over time grows to almost $2 million. Their portfolio almost doubles in value. Yes, they experienced down years, but those down years weren't right at the initial withdrawal phase, when they can be more detrimental to the portfolio's success. Yes, this investor still experienced down years, but those down years weren't right at the initial withdrawal phase, when they are more detrimental to the portfolio's success. And what about for a portfolio with that fixed 7% withdrawal rate, not adjusting for inflation? Well, again, with a portfolio of $1 million and starting in the year 2003, this portfolio is a resounding success. But notice that 20 years down the road, the portfolio has almost the same as its initial starting value, about $1 million. We used a more aggressive withdrawal rate, and it made it so that our portfolio didn't grow as well over time. But keep in mind that our retiree with this type of withdrawal rate would have actually had more money to perhaps enjoy a better lifestyle in those early years of retirement. And over time, even though their withdrawal stayed the same, inflation would have eroded away their purchasing power. Now, perhaps that's not such a big deal because most retirees actually do tend to spend less over time as the retirement years go by. And for most retirees, the goal in retirement isn't to grow their net worth, but rather to afford their lifestyle, to take the time to enjoy everything they've worked so hard to build up. So both the portfolios that began in an upmarket were a success. The retirees were able to withdraw the money they needed. And actually, 20 years down the road, they ended up withdrawing roughly the same amount and having roughly the same purchasing power, as $40,000 in 2003 would be roughly equivalent to $66,000 or $67,000 in the year 2023. I'm gonna be honest, as I was thinking about making this videos and thinking about how these portfolios were gonna perform, I didn't think the rule of 4% was going to fail in any of these scenarios, so that was actually pretty surprising for me to see. But it does give a bigger lesson. I don't think there's one perfect withdrawal rate that works for every person in every scenario, and I certainly don't think you're going to stick to one specific withdrawal rate throughout your entire retirement. Rather, I think you're going to have a more flexible withdrawal rate over time. I think the biggest lesson here is that the best thing you can do for your retirement and to ensure the success of your portfolio is to try and time your withdrawals. To the best of your ability, try and retire into an up market. Now, I know that's not always possible because when you retire is not always within your control. Could be related to a medical event, it could be a job loss, what have you. But because we can't always control when we retire, that's why as you get closer to retirement, it's a good idea to have a year or two worth of cash or cash-like equivalents saved up and at the ready. That way, if you're forced into retiring into a down market, you can actually draw on these cash buckets rather than having to take money out of your portfolio when it's already been hit really hard. So let me know if you got anything out of this video and these examples because I actually did. Leave it in a comment comment down below. I post new videos every single week. If you got anything at all out of this one, please give it a like. If you're new here, please consider subscribing, or if you know of someone who might get something out of this type of content, please consider sharing. I'll see you soon. Bye.